Steve Jobs once convinced his entire engineering team that an impossible deadline was not only possible, but inevitable. He made customers believe they desperately needed products they didn't even know existed. He turned Apple from a garage startup into the world's most valuable company using one controversial superpower that most entrepreneurs are afraid to talk about: reality distortion. But here's what nobody tells you: this same force that built Apple's empire can also destroy everything you've worked for if you don't understand how to wield it responsibly. Today, I'm going to reveal Jobs' exact storytelling framework, the psychology behind reality distortion, and most importantly, how to use this power ethically to build something extraordinary without losing your soul in the process. But before we dive deep into Jobs' reality distortion playbook, I need you to do something right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what I'm about to share could fundamentally change how you think about leadership, persuasion, and building a company. This isn't just theory, these are the exact techniques Jobs used to create some of the most successful product launches in history. And if you're serious about building something that matters, you can't afford to miss a single insight. Now let's uncover the truth about reality distortion that even Apple's inner circle rarely discusses. We're going to break this down into 4 critical sections. First, what reality distortion actually is and why Jobs called it his most important leadership tool. Second, the storytelling framework he used to bend reality in boardrooms, keynotes, and one-on-one conversations. Third, the dark side of reality distortion, the ethical lines you must never cross, and the warning signs that you're going too far. And finally, how to implement Jobs' reality distortion techniques in your own business while maintaining your integrity and building genuine value for your customers. Let me start with a story that perfectly illustrates what we're dealing with. In 1981, Steve Jobs walked into a meeting with his Mac development team and announced that they were going to ship the Macintosh in January 1984. The problem? It was already late 1981. They had barely functioning prototypes, and every engineer in the room knew it was technically impossible to deliver a revolutionary computer in just over 2 years. But Jobs didn't just make an announcement. He painted a vision so compelling that the entire team began to believe the impossible was inevitable. He talked about how the Mac would democratize computing, how it would put the power of technology into the hands of ordinary people, how they weren't just building a computer, but changing the world. By the end of that meeting, engineers who had walked in thinking, "This is crazy," walked out thinking, "We have to make this happen." That's reality distortion in action. But here's what most people get wrong about this concept. They think it's about lying or manipulation. It's not. Reality distortion is about seeing possibilities that others can't see, and then using the power of storytelling to help others see those possibilities too. The term reality distortion field was actually coined by Apple engineer Bud Tribble, who borrowed it from Star Trek. He used it to describe Jobs' ability to convince anyone of practically anything through a combination of charismatic rhetorical style, indomitable will, and eagerness to bend any fact to fit the purpose at hand. But here's the deeper truth. Jobs wasn't distorting reality, he was expanding it. He was taking what seemed impossible and making it feel inevitable. He was taking abstract concepts and making them tangible. He was taking future possibilities and making them present realities in people's minds. Let me give you the psychological framework behind this. Reality distortion works because of 3 cognitive principles that Jobs understood intuitively. First, the power of conviction. When someone speaks with absolute certainty about a future outcome, our brains start to treat that outcome as more likely to occur. This is called the confidence heuristic. We use confidence as a shortcut to determine truth and probability. Second, the narrative fallacy. Humans are wired to understand the world through stories, not statistics. When Jobs painted a picture of the future, he wasn't just sharing data points. He was creating a narrative that people could see themselves being part of. Third, The commitment escalation principle. Once people start investing time, energy, or emotion into an idea, they become psychologically committed to making it succeed, even when logic suggests they should quit. Jobs mastered all three of these principles, but he used them in service of a genuine vision. He wasn't trying to deceive people, he was trying to help them see what he could see. The key difference is that Jobs' reality distortion was always anchored in authentic belief and genuine possibility. Here's where most entrepreneurs go wrong. They try to copy Jobs' confidence without having his conviction. They try to create reality distortion around ideas they don't really believe in, or products that don't really solve meaningful problems. That's not reality distortion. That's just manipulation, and it always backfires eventually. True reality distortion requires three elements: a genuine vision of what's possible, absolute conviction in that vision, and the storytelling skills to help others see what you see. Remove any one of these elements, and you're not creating reality distortion. You're creating confusion, false hope, or worse. Now let's break down the exact storytelling framework that Jobs used to create his reality distortion field. This isn't speculation. This is based on analysis of hundreds of his presentations, meetings, and interviews, combined with first-hand accounts from people who worked with him. Jobs' storytelling framework had 5 core components, and he used them consistently whether he was talking to one person or 1,000 people. Component 1. The status quo problem. Jobs always started by identifying something that was fundamentally broken with the current state of the world. But he didn't just point out problems. He made people feel the pain of those problems viscerally. Take the original iPhone launch. Jobs didn't start by talking about features or specifications. He started by pulling out 3 separate devices, a phone, an iPod, and a BlackBerry, and showing how clunky and frustrating it was to carry multiple devices. He made the audience feel the daily annoyance of switching between devices, of having a phone that couldn't really browse the internet, of having an iPod that couldn't make calls. The key here is emotional resonance. Jobs didn't just identify logical problems. He identified emotional pain points that his audience was already experiencing, but maybe hadn't fully articulated. Component 2. The vision of what's possible. Once he had people feeling the pain of the status quo, Jobs would paint a picture of what the world could look like if that problem were solved. But he didn't just describe features, he described experiences and emotions. Imagine if you could have your entire music library in your pocket. Imagine if you could browse the real internet on your phone. Imagine if using a computer felt as natural as using a pencil. Notice the language. Imagine if ... single quotes. This phrase is psychologically powerful because it activates the brain's visualization centers and makes abstract concepts feel concrete and achievable. Component 3. The inevitable future. Here's where Jobs' reality distortion became most powerful. He didn't present his vision as one possible future among many. He presented it as the inevitable future that was already in motion. This is not just what we're going to build. This is what the world is moving toward, and we're just going to get there first. He would talk about technological trends, user behavior patterns, and market forces as if they were natural laws that made his vision not just possible, but inevitable. This is crucial for reality distortion. You're not trying to convince people that something might happen. You're helping them see that it's already happening, and they can either be part of it or get left behind. Component 4. The personal stakes. Jobs always made his vision personal. He didn't just talk about market opportunities or technological possibilities. He talked about how this would affect real people's lives, including the lives of the people he was talking to. We're not just building a computer, we're democratizing technology. We're not just creating a phone, we're putting the internet in everyone's pocket. This isn't just a product launch, this is your chance to change the world. He made people feel like they weren't just employees or customers. They were part of a movement, part of history in the making. Component 5. The call to commitment. Finally, Jobs always ended with a clear call to commitment. Not just action, but commitment. He would ask people to dedicate themselves fully to the vision, to make sacrifices, to go beyond what they thought was possible. I need you to give me everything you've got. This is going to require us to reinvent everything we think we know. Are you in or are you out? This wasn't manipulation, it was clarity. Jobs was honest about what he was asking for, and he gave people the choice to commit fully or not at all. Now, here's how this framework creates reality distortion. By the time someone has gone through all 5 components, they're not just intellectually convinced, they're emotionally invested. They can see the problem, they can visualize the solution, they believe it's inevitable, they feel personally connected to it, and they've made a commitment to help make it happen. But here's the critical point. This framework only works if it's built on a foundation of truth. Jobs could use these techniques because he genuinely believed in his vision. He had the skills and resources to execute it, and he was solving real problems for real people. To truly understand how to use reality distortion ethically and effectively, you need to understand the psychological mechanisms that make it work. Jobs was operating on principles of human psychology that most people don't consciously understand, but that affect all of us every day. The confirmation bias amplifier, one of the most powerful aspects of Jobs' reality distortion, was how he used confirmation bias to his advantage. Confirmation bias is our tendency to seek out information that confirms what we already believe and ignore information that contradicts it. Jobs didn't try to fight confirmation bias, he harnessed it. He would start by identifying beliefs and desires that his audience already had, then position his vision as the logical extension of those existing beliefs. For example, when launching the iPad, he didn't try to convince people they needed a new category of device. Instead, he started with things people already believed. You love your iPhone, but sometimes you want a bigger screen. You love your laptop, but sometimes it feels too heavy and complicated. Then he positioned the iPad as the natural solution to tensions people were already feeling. The cognitive dissonance resolution. Cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort we feel when we hold contradictory beliefs, or when our actions don't align with our values. Jobs was masterful at identifying cognitive dissonance in his audience, and then positioning his products as the resolution. You believe technology should be powerful, but you also believe it should be simple. Most companies make you choose. We refuse to accept that compromise. By framing Apple products as resolving this dissonance, Jobs made choosing Apple feel like the only logical choice. The social proof cascade. Jobs understood that people don't just buy products, they buy membership in communities. He created social proof cascades by making early adopters feel like they were part of an exclusive group of forward-thinking individuals. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. This wasn't just advertising copy, it was identity positioning. Jobs made buying Apple products feel like a statement about who you were as a person. The scarcity and urgency principles. Jobs was famous for creating artificial scarcity around Apple products. But the scarcity wasn't just about supply and demand, it was about psychological positioning. By making products feel scarce and exclusive, he increased their perceived value and created urgency around adoption. This is the future, and it's available now, but only for people who are ready to embrace it. The message wasn't just buy our product, it was don't get left behind. The authority and expertise halo, perhaps most importantly. Jobs built his reality distortion field on a foundation of demonstrated expertise and track record. People believed his visions of the future because he had successfully predicted and created the future before. This is crucial for anyone trying to use these techniques. You can't create sustainable reality distortion without genuine expertise and a track record of delivery. The techniques amplify your credibility, but they can't create credibility where none exists. The neurological impact. Recent neuroscience research has shown that when someone experiences effective storytelling, their brain actually releases oxytocin, the same hormone associated with trust and bonding. Jobs' storytelling techniques literally created chemical changes in his audience's brains that made them more receptive to his message and more likely to take action. But here's the ethical consideration. This neurological impact is real and powerful, which means you have a responsibility to use these techniques only in service of genuine value creation. When you can literally change how people's brains respond to your message, you have an obligation to ensure that message is truthful and beneficial. The feedback loop effect. One of the most interesting aspects of Jobs' reality distortion was how it created positive feedback loops. When people believed in his vision and acted on that belief, their actions often helped make the vision become reality, which reinforced their belief in Jobs' ability to predict the future. This is why reality distortion can be so powerful for entrepreneurs. When you help people see a possible future clearly enough, they start taking actions that help create that future, which makes your predictions come true, which increases your credibility for future predictions. But this also highlights the ethical responsibility. If you're going to create these feedback loops, you need to ensure they're leading toward outcomes that genuinely benefit all stakeholders, not just yourself. Now we need to talk about the dark side of reality distortion, because this power can be incredibly destructive if misused. Jobs himself crossed ethical lines at times, and there are important lessons to learn from both his successes and his failures. The Tyrannos warning. The most dramatic example of reality distortion gone wrong in recent years is Elizabeth Holmes and Tyrannos. Holmes used many of the same techniques as Jobs' compelling vision, absolute confidence, personal stakes, calls to commitment. But there was one crucial difference. Her vision wasn't grounded in reality. Holmes created a reality distortion field around blood testing technology that didn't actually work. She convinced investors, employees, and patients to believe in a future that was scientifically impossible with current technology. The result was fraud, ruined lives, and a cautionary tale about the dangers of reality distortion without substance. The key lesson: reality distortion must be anchored in genuine possibility. You can stretch people's perception of what's achievable, but you can't completely disconnect from the laws of physics, economics, or human nature. Jobs' own ethical lapses, even Jobs himself sometimes crossed ethical lines with his reality distortion techniques. There are documented cases where he promised delivery dates he knew were impossible to meet, overstated product capabilities during development, used his reality distortion to avoid taking responsibility for failures, created unrealistic expectations that led to employee burnout and stress. The difference is that Jobs usually delivered something close to what he promised, even if it was late or different than originally envisioned. But the human cost was sometimes significant, and there are lessons to learn from his mistakes. The ethical framework for reality distortion, based on analysis of both successful and failed applications of reality distortion. Here's an ethical framework for using these techniques responsibly. The Truth Foundation Principle. Your reality distortion must be built on a foundation of truth. You can stretch people's perception of what's possible, but you can't build on outright lies or impossibilities. The genuine belief requirement. You must genuinely believe in the vision you're promoting. If you're trying to convince others of something you don't believe yourself, you're not creating reality distortion, you're committing fraud. The Stakeholder Benefit Test. Your vision must genuinely benefit all stakeholders: customers, employees, investors, and society. If your reality distortion primarily benefits you at others' expense, you're crossing ethical lines. The Transparency Obligation. You must be honest about risks, uncertainties, and limitations. Reality distortion doesn't mean hiding problems. It means helping people see how problems can be overcome. The Delivery Commitment. You must have a genuine plan and capability to deliver on your vision. Inspiring people to believe in something you can't actually create is manipulation, not leadership. Warning signs you're going too far. Here are the warning signs that your reality distortion is becoming unethical. You're making promises you know you can't keep. You're using these techniques primarily to benefit yourself rather than create value for others. You're asking people to make sacrifices for a vision you don't genuinely believe in. You're becoming defensive when people ask for evidence or details. You need the same thing people who can tell you when your vision is becoming disconnected from reality, when your promises are becoming unrealistic, or when your techniques are crossing ethical lines. This isn't about surrounding yourself with yes people. It's about having trusted advisors who share your values but aren't caught up in your reality distortion field. Now let's get practical. How do you actually implement Jobs' reality distortion techniques in your own business while maintaining ethical boundaries? Here's a step-by-step playbook based on his methods. Step 1. Develop genuine vision clarity. Before you can create reality distortion around your vision, you need to have absolute clarity about what that vision is. This isn't just about your product or service. It's about the change you want to create in the world. Jobs spent years developing his vision for personal computing before he ever tried to convince others. He read, experimented, talked to users, and thought deeply about how technology could improve human life. Your vision needs the same depth and authenticity. Exercise. Write a one-page description of the world as it will exist when your vision is fully realized. Be specific about how people's lives will be different, what problems will be solved, and what new possibilities will exist. If you can't write this clearly and compellingly, you're not ready to create reality distortion around it. Step 2. Master the emotional foundation. Reality distortion works because it connects with people's emotions, not just their logic. You need to understand the emotional landscape around your vision. What frustrations exist today, what aspirations people have, what fears are holding them back. Jobs was masterful at this. He understood that people weren't just frustrated with their computers. They felt intimidated by technology, excluded from the digital revolution, limited by tools that didn't match their creativity. Exercise. Interview 20 people in your target market. Don't ask them about your product, ask them about their frustrations, dreams, and daily experiences related to the problem you're solving. Look for emotional patterns, not just logical pain points. Step 3. Craft your signature stories. Jobs had signature stories that he told consistently across different contexts. The garage startup, the intersection of technology and liberal arts, the crazy ones who think they can change the world. These stories became part of Apple's DNA and helped people understand what the company stood for. You need your own signature stories that illustrate your vision, values, and approach. These stories should be true and authentic, emotionally resonant, relevant to your audience's experience, memorable and repeatable, connected to your larger vision. Exercise. Develop 3 signature stories, one about why you started your company, one about a customer whose life was changed by your work, and one about your vision for the future. Practice telling these stories until they feel natural and compelling. Step 4. Build your credibility foundation. Reality distortion only works if people trust your ability to deliver. Jobs could paint compelling visions of the future because he had a track record of making the impossible possible. You need to build your own credibility foundation. This means delivering on smaller promises before making bigger ones, being transparent about your track record and capabilities, surrounding yourself with credible advisors and team members, demonstrating expertise through content, speaking, and thought leadership, building a portfolio of successful projects, even if they're small. Exercise. List all the evidence that supports your credibility in your field. If the list is short, focus on building credibility before trying to create reality distortion around big visions. Step 5. Practice the presentation framework. Jobs' presentation style wasn't natural. It was carefully crafted and extensively practiced. He would rehearse major presentations for weeks, refining every word, gesture, and timing. Here's his basic presentation framework. Hook. Start with a surprising statement or question. Problem. Identify the pain point your audience feels. Vision. Paint a picture of the solution. Proof. Provide evidence that your solution works. Stakes. Explain why this matters personally. Call. Ask for specific commitment or action. Exercise. Record yourself giving a 10-minute presentation using this framework. Watch it back and identify areas for improvement. Practice until your delivery feels natural and compelling. Step 6. Create systematic feedback loops. Jobs constantly tested his reality distortion techniques and refined them based on feedback. He paid attention to how people responded, what questions they asked, and what objections they raised. You need systematic ways to test and refine your approach. Regular customer interviews and feedback sessions, A/B testing of different messaging approaches, tracking engagement metrics on content and presentations, seeking feedback from trusted advisors and mentors, monitoring market response to your vision and positioning exercise. Set up monthly feedback sessions with customers, employees, and advisors. Ask specific questions about how compelling they find your vision and what questions or concerns they have. Jobs used reality distortion techniques differently depending on his audience and context. Understanding these variations is crucial for implementing his approach effectively. Reality distortion for investors. When talking to investors, Jobs focused on market opportunity, competitive advantage, and financial returns. But he still used emotional storytelling to make the numbers compelling. Instead of just saying, "The smartphone market is worth $100 billion," he would say, "There are billions of people carrying around devices that barely deserve to be called phones. We're going to give them computers that fit in their pocket." Key elements for investor reality distortion. Connect financial opportunity to human impact. Use concrete examples and demonstrations. Show clear path from vision to revenue. Address risks honestly while maintaining confidence. Focus on long-term value creation, not short-term gains. Reality distortion for employees. With employees, Jobs emphasized purpose, impact, and personal growth. He made people feel like they were part of something historically significant. We're not just building products, we're changing how humans interact with technology. Your work here will be remembered long after we're gone. Key elements for employee reality distortion. Connect daily work to larger purpose. Emphasize personal growth and skill development. Create sense of exclusivity and elite status. Set challenging but achievable goals. Celebrate progress and milestones. Reality distortion for customers. For customers, Jobs focused on lifestyle improvement, status enhancement, and emotional satisfaction. He made products feel like extensions of people's identity. This isn't just a phone, it's your connection to everything that matters to you. Key elements for customer reality distortion. Focus on benefits, not features. Connect products to identity and values. Use aspirational but achievable positioning. Create emotional connection to brand story. Make adoption feel inevitable and urgent. Reality distortion for partners. With business partners, Jobs emphasized mutual opportunity, shared vision, and competitive advantage. He made partnerships feel like joining a winning team. Key elements for partner reality distortion. Emphasize mutual benefit and shared success. Show clear competitive advantages. Demonstrate market momentum and traction. Focus on long-term relationship building. Be transparent about expectations and requirements. Reality distortion for media. Jobs understood that media coverage could amplify his reality distortion field exponentially. He crafted messages that were inherently newsworthy and shareable. Key elements for media reality distortion. Create genuinely newsworthy announcements. Use surprising statistics and comparisons. Provide exclusive access and insider information. Make complex topics accessible and interesting. Give journalists compelling narratives to tell. One of the challenges with reality distortion is measuring its effectiveness. Unlike traditional marketing metrics, reality distortion creates changes in perception and belief that can be difficult to quantify. However, Jobs and Apple developed several ways to track the impact of their reality distortion efforts. Engagement metrics. Jobs paid close attention to how engaged people became with Apple's vision and products. This included time spent watching presentations and product demos, depth of questions and discussions generated, repeat engagement with content and events, word-of-mouth sharing and advocacy, employee retention and satisfaction scores, behavioral changes. Reality distortion should lead to specific behavioral changes in your audience. Increased willingness to try new products or approaches, higher tolerance for premium pricing, greater patience with product development timelines, more active participation in your community or ecosystem, stronger resistance to competitive alternatives. Market response. Jobs tracked several market indicators that reflected the strength of Apple's reality distortion field. Pre-order volumes and waiting lists, media coverage quality and quantity, analyst sentiment and recommendations, competitive responses and positioning changes, industry adoption of Apple's innovations, long-term loyalty. Perhaps most importantly, Jobs measured the long-term loyalty and advocacy that reality distortion created. Customer satisfaction surveys and feedback, product performance against promised capabilities, employee morale and belief in company mission, market share and financial performance, innovation pipeline and competitive position. If any of these metrics showed decline, it was a signal that the reality distortion might be becoming disconnected from reality. Steve Jobs passed away in 2011, but his reality distortion techniques continue to influence business leaders around the world. Understanding how these techniques have evolved and been applied by others can help you implement them more effectively. Successful adaptations. Several leaders have successfully adapted Jobs' reality distortion techniques. Elon Musk uses similar techniques to build belief in seemingly impossible visions like colonizing Mars or revolutionizing transportation. Like Jobs, Musk combines genuine technical expertise with compelling storytelling and absolute conviction. Jeff Bezos used reality distortion to build belief in Amazon's long-term vision during years of losses and skepticism. He helped investors and employees see beyond quarterly results to the long-term transformation of commerce. Reed Hastings used these techniques to transform Netflix from a DVD by mail service to a streaming and content creation powerhouse, convincing stakeholders to embrace radical business model changes. Failed attempts. Not everyone who tries to copy Jobs' techniques succeeds. Many startup founders try to create reality distortion around visions they don't genuinely believe in or can't actually execute. Without the foundation of authentic conviction and capability, these attempts usually fail. Some leaders use reality distortion techniques to avoid accountability or hide problems, rather than to inspire and motivate. This approach typically backfires when reality catches up with the distortion. The modern evolution reality distortion techniques have evolved in the digital age. Social media amplifies both authentic and inauthentic reality distortion. Data and analytics provide new ways to measure and refine these techniques. Global connectivity allows reality distortion to spread faster, but also makes it easier to fact-check. Increased skepticism requires higher standards of authenticity and transparency. Here's the truth about Steve Jobs' reality distortion field. It wasn't magic, and it wasn't manipulation. It was a systematic approach to helping people see possibilities they couldn't see on their own, grounded in genuine vision, authentic conviction, and real capability. The techniques I've shared today, the storytelling framework, the psychological principles, the ethical boundaries, these aren't just interesting theories. They're practical tools that you can start using immediately to build belief in your vision, inspire your team, and create the future you're working toward. But remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Reality distortion can build companies and change the world, but it can also destroy trust and ruin lives if misused. Use these techniques only in service of genuine value creation. Maintain your connection to truth and reality, and always prioritize the long-term benefit of all stakeholders. Your homework for this week: choose one element of Jobs, reality distortion framework and implement it in your next important conversation or presentation. Practice the storytelling structure. Work on your conviction and clarity, or refine your vision statement. Start small, stay authentic, and build your reality distortion capabilities over time. If this video helped you understand the power and responsibility of reality distortion, hit that like button and share it with another founder who needs to see this. Subscribe for more deep dives into the strategies and psychology behind the world's most successful leaders. And remember, the future belongs to those who can see it clearly and help others see it too. That's the real power of reality distortion, not bending the truth, but expanding what people believe is possible. Use it wisely, use it ethically, and use it to build something that truly matters.